Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to be building my entry to the Gaslands UK Car of the Month. It's been some time since I participated into the Gaslands Car of the Month. This is mostly due to timing. Either I've been working on one too many projects or I just couldn't think of anything to go along with the theme for that month. Anyhow, February's month is Cult of the V8, in which we have to build cars inspired by the Mad Max Fury Road movie. And out of all the great cars in that movie, I've always kind of liked Cranky Frank, which you'll see pictures of here now. Unfortunately, that car's based on a Holden Ute, and you can't really get that in diecast form. I think the closest I've seen is a 143 scale one, but as part of the Rosal competition, it has to be a 164 scale casting. So instead, I'm going to use this Hot Wheels Custom 53 Cadillac, because I think it looks close enough to the original car. Off camera I drill out the post so I can disassemble it, and now I'm just going to put the base plate into a jar of bleach to dechrome it. So this casting has a go-kart moulded into the back of it, which I'm just going to cut out using some sprue cutters. And I'll put that to one side and I'll possibly use it in a future build. So to start with the car, I'm going to first try and give it that iconic engine that Cranky Frank has. And to do this, I'm going to attach this Kimsel Design engine pan, which is the first time I've ever used one, using some patent pending Super 9 glue, because it sticks to everything apart from what you want it to stick to. And then add a Kimsel Design double stacked supercharger and air scoop. Now the real life Cranky Frank doesn't actually have a hood, but I thought about cutting it out, but I was going to make a mess of it and I was working on a bunch of other things and didn't really think I had the time to do a proper job. As well as if you look at some of the concept art and the early stages of Cranky Frank, it did originally have a hood, so I kind of want mine to lean more towards the early version. Next was the exhaust, for which I used some Kimsel Design ones and glue them on into place like so. With the base now completely dechromed, I start by filing down the rear wheel arches to fit the new wheels. So I file down the wheel arches and then just test fit the wheels, and I keep repeatedly doing this until I'm happy with the wheels fitting flushly. With that done, I move on to the front wheels. Firstly by cutting for these tabs here with some sprue cutters, and then filing them down and then trimming them down a bit more with my hobby knife. Followed by measuring and cutting a piece of styrene tube for the new front axle. Which I then glue in place, making sure everything lines up correctly. After this, I take a paper clip to use for the new axle and straighten it out. And then cutting it to the correct length I need. For the front wheels, I'm using these Kimsel Design 12mm Tyre Design 3 Rim Design 3. Next I use this Kimsel Design axle for the rear, marking it and cutting it when I need to so the wheels won't stick out past the body. And then use my jeweler saw to trim down the axle. And then glue this into place off camera using the same methods for the front axle. The rear wheels are 14mm Tyre Design 8 Rim Design 8. For the rear gunner, I trim off the gun's bipod to make it sure to help it fit into the bed easier. I found this piece of corrugated styrene in my scraps box and cut it to fill the gap, to fill the hole in the bed, left after removing the go-kart. I then glue in some pieces of styrene to help secure this in place. Next I cut and glue a piece of styrene tube for the drive shaft. Followed by marking, cutting and bending some styrene rod to make the roll cage in the back for the gunner. Gluing it into place and test fitting the gunner to make sure it's within the right height. For the funder sticks, or the funderpoons as they're known, aka the exploding sticks that they use in the Mad Max films and the game, I cut a very thin piece of styrene rod and then I cut a piece of styrene tube to go over the end. Once assembled, I then glue these into place into the back. Next I wanted to add a sun visor like the real life car has, so I took a piece of styrene and cut it to shape and then slightly bent it to curve around the roof. And then glued it onto the front of the roof over the windshield. And then add some flags which I made using some styrene rod and some tissue paper for the flags like so. So next it's time to add the driver, which I'm going to use this World War II Desert Rat because of the desert theme. Firstly I cut out the seat to try and make plenty of room for him to fit in. Unfortunately there's still not enough room, so I have to resort to my old technique of cutting off his legs. And then he fits in nicely, so I glue him in place. Now onto the painting. I start with a nice base coat of Revell Rust. On top of this I stipple on some Revell Leather Brown. And on top of that I stipple on some Revell Bronze to give it that nice rust effect. The next colour I stipple on is Revell Tank Grey, and I just do this for the doors because it matches the real life car. Followed by stippling on some light green onto the hood, just because I kind of like this turquoisey green colour and it fits the 50s car aesthetic. I stipple on some Revell aluminium onto the exhaust, engine and bumpers. I use some Revell grey on the ammo box on the back. And I use some Revell wood brown on the stick part of the Thunderpoons. I use some Revell metallic silver for the ends of the thunder sticks. For the headlights I use some Revell beige. And for the tail lights I use some Revell fiery red. Following this I use some Revell matte black on the drive shaft and rear axle, as well as the tyres. And then apply a base coat of Revell flesh on both the driver and the gunner, followed by some Revell sandy yellow to paint their clothes. And I use some Revell tank grey to paint the gunner's boots. For the interior I use some Revell leather brown. And I paint the machine gun with some Revell matte black. For the rims I use some Revell rust. And then for the ammo belt I use some Revell gold. I then dry brush on some Revell aluminium onto both the machine gun and the rims. And here's the final build. Now off camera I applied some homemade black wash just because I forgot to film this part because I was in a rush to get this done on time, because again it's been a while since I've done a Gaslands UK car of the month build, so the deadline crept up quite quickly, so I just stopped recording and tried to make sure I got the thing finished on time. Sadly, while painting the flags, you didn't see, it didn't really turn out well, and because I was that close to the deadline anyway, I just didn't bother. I just removed them, but when I painted them they kind of wrapped up again and became a bit of a nightmare, so instead of trying to redo the flags I just took them out completely because there really wasn't much time with the deadline creeping up that quick. Anyhow, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. Obviously it's not Holden, but it looks close enough, and there was some liberties taken because obviously I didn't want to cut the hood out. Though I do wish I had some more Warboy looking figures for this build. This is something I just didn't have at hand at the time, but maybe next time if I build something else similar. Like usual, please stick around for the glamour shots and the short animation. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.